Okay, welcome to the latest in our podcast series. I'm here with Stephen Wakeling and we're going to be talking about the fascinating subject of trance. Tell us what is meant by trance, Steve.
Well, again, people have got different views of what it actually means, but I would say the easiest thing is if somebody is gifted for trance in different forms, they're taken over by the entity of a spiritual person. Generally, that would be what we call as a guide or something. Helen Duncan, who was actually imprisoned, saw and reported through information that came through a trance mediumship about a ship called HMS Barham.
This was during the war, wasn't it?
Yeah, HMS Barham and battleship. She turned on a side and what eventually went turtle and blew up, and she knew that information before anybody else. So, you know, that caused lots of problems and lots of ripples because they felt that she could be a spy or pass information. And so she was in prison.
Did she spot that before it happened, or she knew she was the first?
She reported. It was obviously
she reported it,
yeah,
and they'd covered it up or whatever.
Well, you know, I'm not have the great knowledge about exactly what all of her work, but as I'm led to believe in my limited knowledge, is that she information came through in a trance about a young man who was on HMS Barham, and when the ship was torpedoed, I'm not sure where the Barham was, but it was a tragic loss to the British fleet, and that information then leaked out. Of course, Portsmouth, where she was, ultimately she went to court, and she was locked up under the Fraudulent Mediums Act.
Yeah, fascinating. Talking of fraudery, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this subject up now is I find fascinating the whole kind of late Victorian growth of the spiritualist movement, really, and there were a lot of people who were kind of taken in by, I suppose, fraudulent people. Arthur Conan Doyle was one of the sort of more famous people at the time who really got into it as a subject and as an interest, and followed some people who subsequently were exposed as frauds. And one of the sort of common things that used to happen was people had, you know, purport to be in trance, going to trance, and, you know, kind of comedy amounts of ectoplasm had sort of,
yeah.
And there's this great white stuff would pour out of their mouths, you know, yes. and they'd sort of speak in interesting accents and that kind of thing, really. As a skeptic, trance is one of the hardest things to believe, I suppose. You know, what would your comeback to that be, I suppose?
Well, there is different, you know, there has been different trances. There's what they call transfiguration, where the face changes, materialisation, where somebody forms at the side of you. So what you use the term ectoplasm. Look in Wikipedia, it gives you an interesting thing about that. If you Google it, it'll tell you a little bit about ectoplasm. But I've seen real trance. I've had the fortune of seeing real trance, and I've also seen fake. I don't know why people do it. Maybe for glorification. I don't know. And this is the tragedy of our movement all through time, is that, you know, you've got genuine mediums, but we have people who are fraudulent. Now, whether they do it to make money or whether they do it because it's self-delusional, I don't know. But you can almost certainly see the difference. Now, the first time my teacher Jack Corbett went into trance, when he came out of trance, he kind of like, did anything happen? And it did. And he said, what did you say? I said, well, I actually said nothing. In my life, there's only been a couple of occasions where I don't know what to say, and I didn't know what to say. I really was taken aback. He went into trance quite a few times. He gave me, without going into details, some information, not only by the time, the date, the place, which was out in the Far East, the year, which was 1966, who was there, what was happened, who wrote something, and even to the name of the woman who I knew over there, a woman I knew in Singapore, who I for years had been pronouncing her name incorrectly. I'd got the spelling right, but the pronunciation was wrong. They could not possibly have known any of that.
Let's talk about the different types of trance, really, because if you look at it as a sort of continuum between one sense of what you do, I suppose, which is sit there, get these messages, and just normally speak them back to people and go, I've heard this, does that make any
Yeah.
sense? And then extending out from there, I suppose, is you know, more and more, from my end, incredulous sounding stuff. For instance, the shape of somebody's face changing, you know, a person taking on another person's form, an apparition, a third party appearing in the room, ectoplasm, apparition, call it whatever you want, you know. What are the different types of trance, and you know, kind of, where do you stand on this? You know, what's conceivable and believable to you from where you're seeing?
Well, there are different levels of trance, and again, it's the most rarest of rare gifts. It is a very, very special gift, and that's why we have people who would desire that gift. It takes years and years of dedication. We call it sitting, which is basically in a room, generally in the dark. I can never understand why they have to be in the dark.
It's always in the dark, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I've seen spiritual people, you know, I've seen people, and they say you could have, as long as they're not in fancy dress, you wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah.
And you could meet them, and it's...
Well, they always do that on a ghost hunting programme.
Yes.
The first thing they do is turn the lights off and put on that night cam, and then somehow, you know, that's more conducive to something appearing, you know. Why does that make any difference?
You know, as my teachers say, why dwell in the lowlands of ignorance where only fools and monkeys chatter? And I find that peculiar because, but you see, with the trance normally there is, for example, if I'm working, and many mediums will do the same, we have an altered state of consciousness, so we have become different. So people see me, and my wife's been aware. The second time I ever did any spiritual work, I took my wife, and I was a different person. A different countenance takes over, and I'm aware of that, so I will change. And so we could say the vibrations change, all sorts of things change. It can be even more defined when you start to see transfiguration, where the face changes. My teacher again showed me.
Do you believe in that?
I've seen it, yes.
You've ever seen that? Or?
Well, my teacher used to show me, he used to put a red, he said, I'll give you an exercise, and it was pitch black. He said, I'll put this light against my face, it was red. He said, what happens? Well, you look distorted. Well, when I was in the Navy, we went to action stations, the ship was red light, and it looked strange. It does look strange, because we're not accustomed to seeing things like that. But your face does change. People see my face change on the platform. I've seen other people change, the countenance.